Hello, we are back. Wow, that week went by fast.
Guess who's back?
What?
Back
Who?
again.
What?
Slim Shady. Never
Shady
mind.
back. I was like,
Thank
what
you.
song is? I was gonna say Backstreet
Guess
Boys.
who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's
You're not thug enough.
I know.
I'm like, oh shit.
Is that NSYNC? Who was that? I don't remember that song.
I'm like, is really
Shawn
no one
Mendes?
gonna jump in right now?
Shut up. Okay, I'm never gonna live it down. One time we were at convention and I said, I want something really thug-like music. And then I was like, ooh, no, Shawn Mendes. I was not meaning Shawn Mendes was thug. I changed my mind that I wanted Shawn Mendes, you jerks.
No one believe her, guys. She's lying to make herself better.
I want thug life like Shawn Mendes.
Oh, wow. We're really starting off fun today.
You want
I'm
to know
liking
something
it.
funny? Garrett
Yeah.
speaks fluent Spanish, and he's been living.
Living
he's
La
been-
Vida Loca?
No, he's been listening to Spanish like hip hop, but it's like really thuggish,
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like. And I'll be like, is this like really dirty? And is that why you like it? And he's like, it's so good. And it's like the funniest thing ever because my husband's like this tall, white, blonde hair, blue eyes. And he's rolling down the street with his thug Latin
Mexican
music.
music?
Yes. And I'm like,
In the Aventador. That's what I love.
yeah, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I would laugh at you if you drove by. But good for you. But he does speak Spanish and he likes it. So I'm like, good for being you.
See, own your flaws, just like we talked about last time.
Be you.
Okay, so production today.
Yes.
So the kind of path we're taking on production is we talk a lot about stories and how people can get stuck in a story. Danielle, explain to people, like, what is a story even? Because this isn't like a Disney character.
So, okay. Well, so a story is basically like people will say, I can't operate a certain level because they have a story of who they are. And it could be not in their whole life. It could be like, I'm this way in my business relationship. I'm this way in my marriage. I'm this way in my religion. I'm this way with my family. And everybody has a story of how they kind of operate. And so they literally can't see themselves coming outside of that story. And so if you kind of jump into any kind of self-help book or anything, it's typically usually most people will jump into that when they're kind of in a painful place in their life and they're like, okay, my story's not lining up and I'm in like this state of chaos. And so anything you dive into with self-help is the first thing they talk about is like your story. You're having struggles in your life at this point because that's your story of how you need to operate. And it's really like about letting people like free their mindset in order to kind of ultimately create the situation in your life or your story of how you want to live.
So Val, this is something we see, a lot with the training that we do. People come in with stories about, good Lord, anything and everything. What have you seen with people who can't even own the fact that they have a story? They're like, it just is, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's human nature to like justify anything that you're doing. So if you say you don't have any stories, you're bullshitting yourself because you do it about anything, and it could be a positive thing. You could have a positive story that's working for you, but when you're stuck in like a negative cycle, that's when like your story isn't serving you. Like I always say, like my parenting style, my story is it's suggestive parenting. I suggest to the kids what to do. They usually say nope, and I'm like, good talk, and then we go about. But it's working for us.
I like that
like
parenting strategy.
and I like it too. It's fun for everyone. No one's getting hurt, and so that story is serving me, and I like it.
It might not serve you later when they're
Right.
teenagers.
But we'll get to that at that time. When it's no longer serving me, I'll change that story. But I like it. It's funny. Like, oh, I'm like a freestyle parent, and the kids are happy. I'm happy. It's cool. So that's working for me. But like when your story, so that's what I mean by like every little aspect of your life, you have a story attached to it because like your human brain, like you have to have justification for why you do what you do. I do this, it makes sense because of this,
But
it's just like the natural thing. But when it's not working for you, that's when you need to like change your story. If you get stuck in something, or if you're having negative reactions from it or negative results from something, that's being stuck in a story and it's not serving you and you're not able to grow. And that's when you need to like shift it. So when people come in and they say they don't have stories, one, you're lying.
You know what story you have? The story of you don't have stories.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Or two, sometimes they're just not at a point where they're willing to like look at themselves to start growing. They're just like being a little more resistant and stubborn, and they're like, no.
But it's an excuse too. Like I find like on a deeper level, I've had family members who have like committed themselves to like drug rehab centers and all this, and I realize their story is I need help, but I also realize they're validating their story of like they like the attention of saying like I have to go back to, and that's kind of a deep story, there's been situations even like I said within our family, and so I wonder like why are you feeding that story? Do you know what I mean? And is it because you're liking the attention, and could you get attention in a more positive way?
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Because I had anxiety for years, and I would say I can't do this in business because I'm a mom. I have anxiety. I'm being selfish. I just have to be a mom, and that was my story. And I was like, I can't risk I literally was so crazy to the point where I was like, I can't risk my children's lives. Like, it was to that point. And I like kept feeding this emotion of like, I can't. And I realized like I had to change that story. And I realized I was like, oh my God, that is the biggest fucking excuse I have ever heard. Like there was like one night literally where I came down and like my higher self came down and like kicked my ass. Like I just was like, I'm done with that story because that story wasn't serving me anymore. And so it's like, that's when you don't even realize when you're stuck in a story that I was probably living, like feeding off like the validation of like, I don't have to succeed more in business. Do you know what I mean? And it's ultimately can even be an excuse, or even down to like, I'm getting validated with so much attention that's serving that I'm feeling loved. But could you feel loved another way? Do you know what I mean? Like I just think of like, I literally have two sisters who went into, I shouldn't say sisters, but family members that have similar situations where they went into rehab. And one of them, we actually helped pay for a solid month of their rehab, and it was like $30,000. And we were like, we'll help you out 1 month. And then we were like, you know what? We're not gonna help you out another month. And so Garrett got on a phone call with one of like the coaches and the person, and he was just like, where are you at? Because he was like, God, I don't want to continually give $30,000, you know, but I want to see where you're at. They had a tough conversation. And that day, she checked herself out of rehab, and because he was like, you know, you could take out loans, you could pay if you need this rehab. Like, there's sources, I'll help you get loans, but I'm not going to pay for it anymore. And the minute it came down to that, she was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to pay for that. So she checked herself out, and I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, that's so interesting. And he's like, she totally kind of like flipped. And all of a sudden, it was like, I don't know what story she was even telling herself, that maybe that's where she felt like love and validation and attention. Do you know what I mean? But the minute she had to pay for that love, validation, and attention, not to discredit any problems that she may or may not have been having, all of a sudden she could kind of like changed her story, and now she's good, you know. But it's just interesting when I see people get stuck in a story, because it's not they literally are feeding some kind of other emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like it's like they feel loved in doing this shitty thing, you know. And so they validate feeling loved versus like, it's like this weird like Jekyll and Hyde, like I'm loved but I hate this, but I'm loved but I hate this, but I'm loved, you know. And so, I don't know, I'm going off on a story, but that's like one thing for me that I believe that people have stories, but they don't change them, because at some level of the story, some kind of emotion is validating them.
Well, and I like what you said about how a lot of the times people use stories as an excuse to kind of, it's to play small. It's to not have to, because realistically, growth is not easy. Like, it's not, you don't wake up one day and you're like, I want to be better today than I was yesterday. All right. I mean, growth is something that it can be painful sometimes. It can be painful emotionally, physically, depending on what you're doing, but it's not easy. And people really do. They find a story that they're comfortable with in whatever phase they're in. It's inside of their bubble. They feel safe, and they cling to that. And then from that story, they continue to keep that story just to be like, oh, I don't have to do that because, like, oh, you know, I can't close down my salon because if I do, then everyone here is never going to have a job again. If they don't have a job and they make no money, if they make no money, then all their kids die because they're dying of starvation. And all of a sudden, you think
your brain goes
you're
there.
playing
Yeah.
you're playing God all of a sudden with these people's lives. Like, oh, if I close my doors, you're all going to hell in a handbasket because your lives are going to suck. Like, wait a minute, they had a job before you. I'm pretty sure they can get a job after you.
Yep.
So, like, Val, like, what have you seen like within our students of taking a story and making it such, like, using it as an excuse to like never move forward because they don't really like analyze the story?
Yeah, I think because that's where people's brain like naturally goes, and no one's ever, like in our industry especially, where no one's ever questioning you or saying, playing devil's advocate. Like, what's, like Garrett always says, like, what's the opposite of that story, you know? And then you have to like totally change your perspective. But I think so many people like, I can't lose this employee because they've been with me forever and they're going to badmouth me, or they're going to this and that, or I can't close the doors because these people will never have jobs again. And like you said, you know, the world actually ends. And so many people won't act because they have a story in their head and they've already choreographed what's going to play out. And that's not reality. So many things, so many factors come in and can change the outcome of something. But so many people stay stunted in their growth because they've already made up the story in their head. They've already choreographed every last detail of what's going to happen, the end result. And it's like, none of that's actually reality. And so they refuse to like do anything. They don't act upon anything that would actually help them grow, would help the business, and might actually free other employees, be like beneficial to absolutely everyone, because they created this story, and because they've stamped it as truth, then they do nothing about it.
I love what you're saying right now, though, about how people go through and like choreograph every move. I'll be honest, I used to be that person. I know. Let's not all be shocked that I was planning everything in my life, but it's true. And so even jumping back to like when I was engaged, and I was like, shit, but this is it. Like, we're getting married. Like, no matter what else, other problems, I'm like, we're getting married because this is like this is just the plan. Yeah. It was the plan. Like, we were dated for this long, then we got engaged. We're supposed to get married.
Do you feel like you had to like let that Ani die?
Yes.
Like literally, like it's like a rebirth, but you had to, and people are worried like letting this person die. Like they hold so much like, this is who I am.
Yes,
you know?
and I think part of it is not that I didn't know who I was going to be outside of that, but we'd been together for 6.5 years. We've been best friends for 10, engaged for a year, and I had my, like, everything in the wedding was planned and paid for. So obviously, like, it was supposed to happen. I can't say going to happen, but it was supposed to. So all of a sudden I was in a place of, the story I've had is we are getting married because he's my soulmate and we're perfect together. And then when I sat, and I will never forget, it was when Garrett was like, he can come out of this in 5 years. Are you willing to wait 5 years? I go, no. And that was the end of discussion. Like, it was so quick to me. And in that moment, I was like, ooh, I haven't even really like asked myself, do I want to get married to him anymore? Mm-hmm. Because I was in that place for so long of like, yeah, we're doing this. We're getting married. Like, yeah, we're going to get the salon. Like, we're going to buy this house. For sure, we're hiring on 10,000 more people. Like, you know, it's, you have that story for so long that you don't really even ask yourself, is this what I want? So, like, Danielle, where have you seen that? Have you ever had a story, or even like with friends or family, that they like stayed in it so long that had they just asked themselves like, hey, are you actually happy? Yeah, okay, you went through a gnarly breakup, but if he came back, would you really want him back?
I think it's hard because we hold on to our identity, and we always assume if we're not in our current situation that it's going to be worse, which is weird because you'll be in this like super like play, like for me, I'd be like super unhappy and uncomfortable, and it was shocking to me now when I look back at my old self. Like, I was willing to live in that space for so long in fear of failure, you know? And I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, a lot of times people will like, they won't want to like let things go, and they don't even the more important thing is like, they don't even realize the point of pain that they're in. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think when you're in it, you're just like, it's fine. Like, no, it's fine. We'll make our business work next month, or we'll make this relationship work next time, or like, we just keep persevering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where you're like, but if you can ask yourself, but if I were to change, if you entertain that thought of, am I happy if I change this, and you look at it through a different lens, you might be like, oh, the sky is not falling. We're not all going to like burn to the, you know what I mean? It's like we go in our heads instead of listening to our hearts. And so oftentimes it's like our heads will always like create the craziest stories ever. Mm-hmm. Like literally like your head's a little crazy. Like it is what it is. And your heartstrings are the one that are like, for me, like they're pulling, like you don't want to do this. And so it's this conflicting message of like craziness and like truth. You know what I mean? And when they align, you're like, okay, let's make some logical decisions and let go of this old person. And then you can see a more clear path, and you're like, here we go.
And it's funny because sometimes people need to be a little bit more, sometimes people need more emotion inside of a situation because they are being too ice cold and they're not like feeling what's actually happening. And then sometimes people are so far into the emotions that they actually need their head to like reel them back out and logically, like fact-based, no emotions, look at something. And that's something we even do inside of our boot camp, that, okay, no emotions, don't tell me how you feel. Like, look at your salon, look at your life, look at your relationship. How's it going? Mm-hmm. And one of our students was just recently like, okay, here's what's up. I'm separated. I have 3 kids. Here's my salon. I'm going to make $400,000 this year. Like, take home. Like, she's killing it. And by the end of the 2 days,
did you say 4,000?
400.
Oh, I was like, that doesn't sound like she's killing it. But
you're like she's being killed. Someone's murdering her. But no, 400,000 doing hair. And by the end of this, just really going through and like looking at the facts of this, she was like, I'm like, what's your goal for the year? She's like, 300. She's like, I want to make less money. She goes, I don't want to work this hard anymore. I'm like, good for you. And I'm sure people, even your face for a second was like, wait, what? But she was killing herself working. She was working 6 days a week. She was never seeing her kids because the story in her head was, if I slow down, how am I going to provide for my kids? Not realizing, like, dude, you're making $400,000. I can guarantee you can provide for your children making $300, you know? But before she actually looked at the story, she wasn't able to like come out of that space. And that's why when she left, she's like, I want to make less money this year, and I'm going to work less, and I'm going to get a divorce.
You know what's funny is she'll probably cut back and make the same amount of money.
Oh, I can guarantee you.
Because she'll go in with this, you go in this attitude of like, I don't care anymore. And so you're like, I think I'm going to raise my prices tomorrow. And it's so non-emotional. And you may have known you needed to raise your prices for a while, and all of a sudden you're just like, hey, it is what it is. And even with clients, you're like, yeah, I raised my prices because I'm in business. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, makes sense. Here you go. Here's extra money. And then you're like, oh, cool. Good for me.
Extra money. I'm going to go bathe in it now. Thank you very much.
So even saying like she's willing to take a step back, I bet she like ends up working less and making at least the same, if not more. Because I found that with myself. I'll be like, it's not worth it. Fuck it. And then when I approach the attitudes, it's like, I don't care. This is what I'm going to charge. This is what my time's worth. All of a sudden, I start making more. And that's like a cool space to be in. But sometimes you have to hit that place where you're like, I can't continue to like go at this pace, you know?
Yeah. Well, and even with her, because she came to our boot camp, which is where we focus on like the BMS boot camp is like marketing, it's business. We do no hair there. She finally started running ads for herself. I think within a couple days, she already had like 2 deposits down more. So, and now it's like, okay, now you're getting the actual clients you want. Now you can reel it back a little, but all this was birthed from literally being like, is this whole thing you're holding on to? Do you even want this? So Val, I know you are like the queen, not of being emotionless, but the queen of like, here are the facts, period, no emotion. Why is that so helpful when someone's like holding on to a story so much, just to be like, no, put aside feelings for 10 minutes and look at just facts?
Because then it's easier to make a decision to move forward because it makes sense. Like, you're not like, oh, I'm being sensitive, I'm being over dramatic, I'm being angry. Like, you're not basing it because your feelings will come and go. But, like, facts are facts. So if I put everything down and I'm like, okay, these are my feelings, and not that they're right or wrong, but they're in the feelings category, and then these are actual facts, then you can make a clearer decision. Like, okay, this actually makes sense. Or, when I take out this doesn't make sense, and my story, like, is stunting me from doing something, you know? And I have, like, I can say for myself, even though we teach what we teach, I still am like that person. Like, I have to be busy all of the time to prove that I'm worth being here, to prove that, like, I work hard enough to earn the money that I'm making, you know? And I'm realizing, no, I need to be smarter with my time. And I got that epiphany, like, when we were at convention. And since then, I've never been happier. Like, I am not, like, there's no way I'm taking a 5 o'clock client. Like, I take my 3 to 4 clients a day. I book them closer together. Like, I'm valuing my time, and I'm showing up happy and refreshed every single day. I'm not mad. I'm not stressed. I'm not burnt out. And I'm still making the same amount of money, if not more. But I'm just, like, happy. And, like, I just feel, like, light and balanced. And I know, like, everyone has, like, their seasons, and I'll get stressed out at some point again. But, like, I had this story in my head, like, no, to be worth, like, working at DKW and being at BMS, you have to be stressed. And, like, now, like, I wake up and I work out before I go to work. I've never, ever, ever worked out in the morning. Never. But, like, I'm able to, like, work out, and then I get to work at 9, and I do my 3 to 4 clients. I do something at BMS, but I only devote, like, an X amount of time. It's not like, okay, I'm going to work here till my job's done. No, I'm giving you an hour and a half. And then I know that I can get so much done in an hour and a half, you know? I'm just more productive with my time and setting up the boundaries and sticking to them. And I like this story better. It's serving me better. My kids are getting a better version of me. I'm, like, happy with myself. Ryan's getting a better version of me. The clients are getting a better version of me. Like, I just feel happy, and I know, like, everyone else can feel that as well.
I think I remember I went through like a couple years where I was like so stressed, but I valued like growth so much, and I loved how things were going with business. And I was probably like in a place even where I'm sure both of you guys have been, where you're like, I can't let go of the growth, and with the growth, I have to be stressed, right?
Yes.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like you're obviously willing to be stressed because it's feeding this emotion of growth. Right? So every contradicting message or story has an upside of why we're making our life shitty. Because we're making more money and we're growing. Yeah. But what if you could make more money and grow and be happy? So you take the negative side of the story and you flip it. And in doing so, they align. And you're like, holy shit, I can. Like, I didn't realize. Because I did for years, like a good solid 3 years, I was like that's when my anxiety was high. We were moving a ton. It was rough. Like, like I look back and I'm like, Jesus, because now I'll have a little guilt set in where I'm like, hey, I'm late for the podcast, or hey, like I just like am like free flowing, but I like love it too. And I'm like, no, I'm finally in a place where like things are like skyrocketing in business, and like I can take time for me and I can work out. And it's like weird how like these little things, like a workout in the morning, you're like, yeah, look at me, I'm super mom. Like,
right?
It's so weird, and you don't realize that you're missing that balance in your life until you decide to like change it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can be successful and not burn out. Like, that's the craziest shit I've ever heard. Who knew?
Or about the story that all of us have had, that like we're the only one who could do it.
Yeah.
Like, how arrogant. Like, guess what? You're not the only person. I didn't know how to do NBR. I'm not the queen of NBR. Like, I'm really good at it, but I'm not like, someone else can come in at any point and be taught the exact same way that I am, you know? Right. And same thing like BMS. Like, I'm the only one who could learn all the systems and do all this stuff and know the back end. And then Michaela comes and you're like, oh shit, she knows everything too, you know? Like, so egotistical of us to think like we're the end all be all and we can only do this and no one else can come on and work at the same pace as us. Blah, blah, blah. And then they come in and you're like, oh, cool. And not only is it like an ego check, like you aren't the end all be all, but like now you get this opportunity for someone else to rise and reach their full potential, and you get some breathing space. And then with that breathing space, you can produce better quality. Yeah. Now that we're not managing tiny little things in the network, then we have the opportunity to, like, since I haven't been doing every last thing in the network, I'm like, oh, here's how we can make the live training better. Here's how we can do NBR feedback better. Like, I get way more ideas on like how to keep creating, and it creates more opportunities for other people. But it's just so funny that we all have had this story of like, I'm the only one who could do this, and then it's like, no, guess what?
And
you're not.
And what are we limiting ourselves to seeing if we don't open up more time and space? Like, even just like recently, I haven't told you, but I'm going to write a book.
I actually have heard. I hear everything, Danielle.
Okay, yeah, I decided I'm going to write a book, but I forever, like, I didn't have the time to put into it, and I had a story that I'm dumb, I'm a hairdresser, I'm not a writer, who are you to be a writer? And I was like realizing like I've had all these like stories going in my head, and then like we were doing hot seats on Monday, and I was like, I'm fucking writing a book, and it's going to be called The Dumb Hairdresser, because I believe that I'm anything but a dumb hairdresser, and my success in life and business has proved that. You know what I mean? So it's just, I don't know, and I think it's cool how you're like touching base on like you have to like let go of your ego, because I see this a lot in our industry too, where you'll have the owner or the top stylist, and they're like, well, my stylists they just aren't that good. Well, that's your fucking fault. Why don't you train them to be as good as you? Why don't you release that control and know that if they're good as good as you, if not better, then you're going to make more money, because you're going to get a better result for your clients. You know what I mean? So it's always like kind of taking that ego and having a check, like an ego check, I guess you could say.
Well, and I think, and part of to look at it is, it's not just in the hairstyling industry, because this is something Garrett has said a lot, that he always said, he's like, well, no one can do what I do. No one can be me. No one can do Warrior Week. Like, I am it. No one can be me. And then Sam Falsafi came in, and now Garrett I think he just started going back to Warrior Week, but he for a time didn't go at all. Right. Sam ran everything, and then he realized, oh shit, with proper training, turns out, anyone can be like the next whoever. Warrior, and then that's what happened with me. Garrett was like, okay, well, it worked with Sam, and he's like, my plan is to have someone come in and take over my role. And then I popped in all of a sudden. And then for me, it has been like a complete control thing of like, okay, because I am so systematized and I like knowing how everything's running. And the minute you give part of it to someone else, it's almost like it's out of your eyesight, and you have to like fully trust that person to like take off with it. And that's why it's always been, to me, just so cool. Like, shit, like Garrett and Danielle do give me a lot of space with BMS, and it's continued to grow, and it's at a great place. And I'm like, okay, now I need some space. And then Mo came in, and I'm like, I need you to upload my assignments. And I'm like, oh my God. And even last night I was like, don't fuck this up. I was like, if you fuck this up, all the assignments are fucked up. I'm like, it's on you. I'm like, are you hearing me? You need to double check the dates, the times. And she's like, Jesus, Ani, I get it. Like, she was like, fucking calm down. I'm like, okay. But even those little things, I'm like, deep breath. She's not a freaking monkey. Like, she's super, super smart, and she's really like...
And you got to eat an amazing taco salad and watch a great TV show last night.
Oh my gosh, guys. I ate myself sick with a taco salad. I ate the shit out of some churros, and I watched Handmaid's Tale. I started it.
What is that?
Handmaid's Tale, it was really dark.
You guys, it's so good.
It's so dark. So, but even with that, like, yeah, you're right. Now, all of a sudden, I don't have to sit here uploading assignments for 8 classes. And like, Val, you've done it. You know how gnarly that is. It is one of the most tedious, time-consuming, like, minute detail tasks that we do.
And look, you had time. Like, it's not like you opened up space not necessarily to find something new in business, but you opened up space to have some damn good tacos.
I had dinner. Guys, I ate. Okay, let me not say that and make it a joke. People are going to be like, Ani doesn't eat. Look, she looks too little. I'm like, oh, fuck, shut up. No, I eat all the time. But it was just
you ate
cool.
more than a Twix and a Twinkie and like whatever.
She ate a salad. You guys.
It was
nutrients were in there.
And it was a taco salad. I think it was carnitas. I don't even know. All I know was delicious. And then I laid there literally like a fat slob, like up against my couch, mowing down on some churros from Sinopolis. It was a really good night for me.
Best.
I know.
Yeah, I had a great time, but I've had to learn to, like partially let go of my ego and like feeling, and I don't even know if it's that, but it's feeling like I have to control everything and that if I let it go, it's going to go sideways.
Yeah, that's an ego. I don't know.
To me, it's a control freak.
If you don't do it and someone else does it and they're going to do it wrong and not right like you, that's an ego.
Well, it's not my fault people have proven that they don't do shit right. Maybe had other people, but how about
I just think of myself as an example. And I remember we were at BMS and then we went to dinner and we were talking about one of our newer members and like how like the common sense didn't seem to be there. And Garrett straight like looked at me and Stacy and it was such a real, this will never leave me. He said, do you know how patient I've been with you two on learning? And I was like, holy shit, yep. I get it. Like, I received the message, like, loud and clear, and we were, like, so impatient on a new team member. Like, it's common sense. Why wouldn't you do that? And then I'm thinking, to Garrett, everything that he was teaching me was total common sense, and it took me so long to learn so many things, and I'm still learning. But, like, we had this, like, ego, like, you dumbass. Like, why aren't you getting it? And it was so realizing that Garrett was just, like, biting his teeth and, like, do you know how patient I've been with you two? And I was like, oh, it hurts, but yup, it's so true.
And that's even yesterday when I was showing Morgan, I'm like, okay, you do this, you do that, here's how you do it. And I did one super quick and I'm like, cool. And she was like, I need you to do it again. And I'm like, again? I'm like, okay. I did it like, really, it was like 1.5 times, but in the middle of the second time, I was like, you fucking asshole. There was a time where you didn't know how to do any of this.
Yeah.
You learn by doing.
There's a balance of like course correcting and letting go. Like there's a balance of like, sweetheart, you're going to figure it out. I need XYZ done. I need it done in the next 45 minutes. Good luck. And then when they come back, just be like, okay, this is, here's how we.
Not great.
They're not great, but you have to be, even like when you're training a new assistant behind the chair, like you have to be like super patient, but be willing to not be like, good enough, because then it's going to really fuck up your appointment. So you have to be willing to like course correct and be like, okay, that was fun. You literally have to like, you want to be like, are you a fucking moron? But you can't do that. You have to, I always am like,
Mo, I've never thought that of you. Don't worry.
I like when Danielle, like I know
nature.
when Danielle's doing that, like she'll like, and then you'll just hear her like giggle, and then she'll give you like a suggestion on how to make it better. She's really reeling it in. I like it.
My mind is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then I'm like, that's socially
and then
awkward,
just, like,
Danielle. Don't
giggle.
do that.
And maybe next time we put some warmth in there.
You know what would be good? You should try this. Yep, that's the one we hear. And I just think it is cool though, like just kind of learning how to like let go, but really go back through and like analyze the stories. Because for so long, and I've said this a million times, but my biggest stress of getting an assistant, I was like, there's no way anyone is going to get along with me all the time. Like whoever I hire has to be
somebody in your space. Like literally.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. If I have somebody in my space, and this is literally how I hire assistants, it might sound really cold, but if I feel like I have to entertain them, if I feel like I have to teach them, they're not the right assistant for me. If they just like show up all the time and they just have a hand and they're just like there, and it's like they're just like this they're not naked, they're like this this person, but it's like I don't even know they're there. Like that's like the perfect assistant for me.
And that's how it was with Mo. She literally one day looked at me, she's like, you don't have to entertain me, just so you know. If you don't want to talk, just tell me. I was like, oh. You're like, oh. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, universe, I got the message. She's my human. Thank you very much. But it's true. I just like that. What I want everyone to really consider going forward with a story is like, number one, at the end of this podcast, really sit down, even if you have to get out a journal and just like write down like, okay, think, what story do I have today? Mm-hmm. Maybe there's an artist that you've been wanting to let go, but you've been stressed out because you're like, oh God, well, if I let them go, whatever, or one left and you've been so upset because a stylist left or an employee left, something happened, but then ask yourself, okay, do I even want this person on my team? Mm-hmm. Do I want this relationship back? If this person came back to me, would I say, yes, let's do this? Or is this part of my life actually serving me? Is keeping my salon open? Do I, factual base, want to keep my salon open? just take a look at it. If it's not serving you, you have to ask yourself the hard questions. If you're not willing to ask yourself the hard questions, you stay stuck in the same story forever. So final words, either one of you, on just stories and like moving and going forward. Coach Val, okay.
Oh, okay. Well, if you get stuck in a story, you're just that. You're stuck. You can't move forward and you can't change anything. So if you're wanting something to change, look at what it is that you're telling yourself of why you're not currently changing it. What is that story? And then how can you change it? What would that look like? Do like literally the polar opposite. Whatever story you're telling yourself, say the polar opposite. And then you'll kind of like open up, like Danielle was saying, you'll have a different lens on things. And then you can kind of start implementing new steps to get to a different story. You'll get to a different place.
Beautiful. Danielle?
I would just say one last thing, like ask yourself, like if you have a story, ask yourself on the flip side, why am I allowing this story to serve me? Am I feeling, do I get more attention? Do I feel love? Am I scared? Like ask yourself, like, because there's this piece of the story that like might make you feel validated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So ask what the validation key in that story is, and could you change the story and still have that feeling of validation? And I think that's why we're scared to move out of our stories, because there's something in that story that is actually is actually giving us some kind of a validation or love, I believe, or attention. So ask yourself, what is it? What is that? And can you get love and attention and validation through changing your story? And the answer is always yes.
Yeah. And honestly, anytime we've been stuck in a story and we've changed something, it's never panned out as bad as you have anticipated. Never once.
No.
So rest in that comfort, if anything.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So thank you for being here with us again. Episode number 35. Is that what we're at? A lot. We're episode number 300. And then stay tuned. So next week, we're going to be back talking our favorite topic, protection. So we'll see you guys.
Profit?
Shit. It's profit.
Profit. God
Look
damn it.
who's detail oriented now, guys. I changed my story.
Well, stay tuned, guys. And when next week we talk about profit. See you then.